Hi guys, how are we? I hope you've all had a good week. Um, I just thought I'd jump on here because this has just been a tough week. I think it's been a tough week for most people. Most people of goodwill, most people who people who have a heart for people, love people, um, and have a heart for social justice. I do have a heart. I feel like one of the reasons why I exist is because of social justice, like because we just need social justice, um, and I think it's important because in a world where we sort of have a lot of injustices happening left, right, and center, we just need people who can be able to speak on them. So I mean, it has been a tough year. Like I said, there's just so much happening this year so far. Like, think about from the beginning of the year, we had all these fires in Australia. We had places which were flooding. We had landslides. We had earthquakes and it's just been crazy. And just when we think we are done with all that and we're trying to settle through and get on with the year, and then we have a pandemic. But that said, is like in a world of social media, in a world where we don't even need to even, you don't even have to need it. You don't even need a TV to be able to know what's happening in the world, because news has come so close to us that we don't even need to go looking for it, because it just comes looking for you. And it's global news. And I think, just like the way things happen and videos, and people say videos go viral, it's the same way like this pandemic went viral, because we are now living in a globalized society where because of technology and globalization, everything has just become so close to home. And so I've been feeling really, my spirit has been feeling, I've not been myself. I've really been praying a lot. I've been reading my Bible, and I've been doing a bit of meditating and just trying to be in good spirits, because when your external environment is toxic or it's not positive, I feel like it's good to be able to foster the internal environment, because at least that is part of my life that I know I have control over. I might not control what is out there. I might not control what is in different worlds, in different people's minds and actions, but I can control what's happening inside of me. So I might as well make the most out of it. And so I've been listening to motivational and motivational and inspiring affirmations every morning, and just trying to stay positive. And I've been trying to stay uplifted, because I also work in an environment where people are vulnerable, and if I am vulnerable, people are vulnerable, and if I am having negative energy, or I don't have the positive vibes, then I don't feel like I'm doing them any service. So it's for me first and foremost, because self-care is self-loving and self-care is not selfish, and because when you are able to self-love, then you have even a bigger capacity to be able to love others and take care of others. So I have to admit that we acknowledge privileges, right? So I will start this by acknowledging my privileges. And one of those privileges that I think, sorry guys, and like I said, I live near a very busy road, so you're just gonna keep hearing cars and stuff. Anyway, we're gonna get better at this as time goes by. These are just baby steps. So I think, what was I saying? One of my privileges, I would say, as an African, as an East African, as a Kenyan woman, is the fact that I grew up in Kenya. That's a privilege. And I know, like most videos have been, or most people have been saying their reviews, talk about what's been happening in America, and all these young men and being murdered in broad daylight, and it's like that person looks like my dad, that person looks like my brothers, my cousins, my aunt, my uncles, and it's like I cannot help but be affected. Like I'm not even trying to not be. It is me. Seeing him die that way, a part of me died as well. That is what humanity is. Whether or not he looked like me, he was a human being. And it just made me, and as I was looking at the situation and hearing a couple of people talk about it, and I could hear people say, oh, okay, so it's African Americans who talk about these issues every day, and they're not listened to, and who are they try to tell? Who are they try to talk to? And is the person they're trying to talk to talking about the same issue? Because then that's the thing. It's almost like if you're talking to a wall, the wall might not talk to you. It might not talk back. If you're talking to someone who has an understanding and who is willing to listen, then maybe there you can say, okay, we are getting somewhere. Anyway, like I said, we had I've seen a lot of African Americans calling out their counterparts, Caucasian Americans, to step up and talk about these issues as well, because it's a national issue. It's not just a race. It's not just a one race issue, because if we are all seeing this as an issue, then maybe we are somewhere. That is a first step. You cannot be able to solve a problem that you don't identify as a problem in the first place. You start looking for solutions the moment you know you have a problem. If you don't think you have a problem, you won't see a need to look for a solution, right? So I think understanding that people of color in America are asking, I really don't even like using white and black, because I don't know, it just sounds weird to me. That is not how we grew up calling people, or at least identifying people from where I'm from. So it's also like something I'm trying to understand how to take every day. But what I can say is the privileges, and I know they were saying, and I know in uni I actually learned, there's something that we learned called white privilege. And white privilege is how it was classified. How it was defined was, let's assume, okay, me as a white person decides that if I can call a cop on you as a black person, I know I've got power over you, because I know if that cop comes and they find that I am a black person, then you know very well I'll probably lose my life. And this is the case in America, where most cases people are just calling cops on people, and then those people are not making it past that encounter. So it's the same thing that happened with George Floyd, because the owner of the restaurant called the cops on him for a 50. Now they're saying before it was a check or a note. Now it's actually a $20 bill that made him die. They called the cops on him when he was still outside the store. You could have just walked out of the store with that $20 bill, tell him, hey, his money is faked, have you got another one? But you chose to call a cop when you knew chances are, when those cops come there, because it's not all cops are, there's that discussion also, it's not all cops are bad, but when you think about the one who killed him, he had 3 other there with him, just looking on and doing nothing. So it's almost like they don't value this person. You're not valued. If you want to, okay, so I will go to my privileges, and I said one of them is growing up in Kenya as a black person, as an African person growing up in Kenya. I think that is a privilege in itself, because there is not a single day that I got up and got worried that someone would think that I shouldn't go to the shops. There's no one day that I thought that I should be afraid of walking in my skin, that I should be afraid of pursuing my dreams in my skin. And I'm not trying to say that African countries, or at least Kenya in this in this context, it doesn't have its problem. It does have its problems, but race is not one of them. And okay, you would argue, yeah, obviously people who look like me are the majority, but that said, even people who don't look like me are not getting killed every day by people who look like me, because we are the majority. You know what I mean? So it goes deeper than that. And just acknowledging that in itself is a privilege. The fact that even when I moved here, I didn't have an issue of racism, because it's not something I grew up with. And I think I talked about this a couple of videos ago, because it's just acknowledging that that's a privilege in itself. And because of that, because I've never had to feel that level of oppression, I've grown up with some level of confidence of knowing when I feel something is not right, I should stand up for myself, because it's injustice. And injustice because it does feel different from what you're used to. But when you've always had a voice, and that voice has not been suppressed by systemic racism, or by a culture, or by something normalized within a culture, then you have that voice, and that voice helps you to speak up, so that you can identify whether what you're feeling has happened to you is actually racism, discrimination, or whatever it is. So I think it did remind me that even though, these are African Americans, saying black people are asking their counterparts, hey, do you want to speak up as well? If you're my friend and you see I am getting killed, are you just going to look at me and say, hey, you should help yourself? This is where friends, we draw the boundaries here. So when we are friends in good times, but we are not friends in bad times. When I'm oppressed, you're not going to come. So I think it's a bad or good situation. I don't think there's an in between. So it's either you are anti-racist or you are racist. And it's funny because I saw this article the other day, and actually one of my friends was also talking about it on LinkedIn, and it was interesting because I looked up this because I felt it was a thing where I've been hearing people say, oh, but I'm not racist, I'm not racist. And I've heard, and I just came to realize there's actually a difference between anti-racism and non-racism. So what I saw was non-racism. It actually marginalizes the historical legacy and contemporary rendering of systemic racism in contemporary society. So non-racism accepts color blindness and racial neutrality, which centers on non-discriminatory intentions and assumes the possibility of racial innocence of people, policies, and ideas. So it grants permission for people who are actually racist or for racist actions to occur unchallenged, as they are not viewed or acknowledged as being racist. So you're actually assuming, okay, I don't know racism exists, I've never felt it, I've never seen it. And because of that, it's almost like you're giving yourself permission to say that I didn't know it exists, so I'm not racist because I didn't know what I said was racism because I just didn't know. Then you have anti-racism, which is an active process against racism that seeks to understand how racial ideology is manufactured and how it impacts the lived experiences of people daily. So let me see what this one says. So anti-racism involves, hold on, I need to have a look at this. Anti-racism involves rejecting false notions of human difference, acknowledging the lived experiences shaped along racial lines, learning from diverse forms of knowledge and experiences, and challenging systems of racial inequalities. So if you're able to say, okay, look, I don't think that you and I are any different. I think by the fact that I've got more melanin or whatever, that shouldn't mean that we are different. By acknowledging that, then that means you are anti, because anti is actually a Greek word coming from I mean, it's a word, it's a Greek word meaning the opposite, against. But when you're it's just an absence. You're saying there is absence. You're just acknowledging there's no racism when you're non-racist. When you're saying I am, but I'm not racist. But when you are anti, that means you acknowledge it exists. You have actually empathized. You've put yourself in the shoes of people who had that lived experience. You've tried to source out. You've tried to meet people who've gone through the experiences and listen to them, listen to their lived experiences, and then you have put yourself in their shoes and you have seen you can't fit, and hence you have tried to see how come up with ideas and solutions to how you can solve it, or how you can help them solve it. So it is what it is, and I think it's 2020, and if the way I saw that guy, the initial video, when I saw it, I knew this is not the first time he's doing this, because he had no remorse. The whole time his hands were in his pocket. He did not even, he was barely moving. He wasn't budging, even when that guy kept screaming, get off him. And he didn't have any emotions. He was emotionless, and it's almost like you could see it's almost like his soul was out of him. And I feel like you kill by a sword, you die by a sword. And it's like, it's in the Bible, and we are saying, was it in the long time ago we were talking about the revolution will not be televised, and now you can see all these things are happening. That news is all over the world. I don't think there's a place in this world that hasn't seen that video. And it's where the world is seeing a culture where people have actually normalized murder, where where you can see a person, because I feel like if you have participated in you cannot take a life that you cannot give. That's what I say. If you do not have a capacity of giving life, you don't have the capacity of taking it. And the fact that he and his colleagues stood there, they stood there and watched him take that man's life. And this is a person's father, a person's partner, a person's child. Can you picture if it's them who are losing their family? Sometimes if you just think, if the situations would be better if you just thought, what if the tables were turned? I think it's a time that, because I know this is not just happening, and I know this is happening because we saw the videos, and I'm only imagining it's the same thing for Ahmaud Arbery, who was murdered jogging. The same thing with the lady calling the cops for the gentleman watching birds in a park, and she called the police. And she's actually telling them, I'm going to call them and I'm going to say that you're an African American man and you're threatening me. So it's almost like it is a privilege, but you have a privilege, but you choose to use it for detrimental purpose. For harming. You choose to use it for harm more than for good. So I think it's a high time for people to acknowledge, if you are a person who have any sort of privilege. And this reminds me of a story. Let me give this story real quick. 2015, I went to the salon. I went to a beauty parlor here in Sydney, and I sat down and I was waiting. It was a booking only kind of salon, and I sat there. So I booked, obviously, went there, sat there because I had to wait for another person who was ahead of me. And just as I was waiting, a lady comes in. Caucasian lady walks in, and from the door she says, "Hey, I just want to do my hair, and I'm sorry I didn't make a booking. Is it a must to make a booking? I'm in a rush, and I need to rush. So do you mind just doing it?" And this lady stopped doing the hair of the lady she was doing, who was an African lady, a lady from the UK, but from an African heritage. I had a conversation with her prior, from a West African background. From a West African, the parents come from West Africa, but she's born in the UK. I had a conversation with her. That's how I knew. I was sitting there waiting for her. This lady, also from another African country, stopped doing her hair and went ahead and did the hair of a lady who just walked in, announcing it to us that she had not even had an appointment to come and do her hair. She did her hair. It took almost half an hour. We had to wait. And at this point, I was waiting because I had made the appointment through the owner, and the owner wasn't there yet. So I waited for the owner, and when the owner came, she did my hair. And after she did my hair, I told her, can we have a talk? Can I talk to you? And I told her what happened. And I said, look, I understand that you might feel some type of pressure when this kind of a person comes to you, but she is a customer just as much as we were customers. She was going to pay for her hair just as much as we were going to pay for our hair. So what makes her think that we need to sit there and wait for her to come with her privilege, knowing that she's carrying her privilege, and activate it in front of us and get her hair done and then walk away with her, pick up her privilege and walk away with it, knowing that she's going to do it somewhere else. So I felt like at that point I couldn't have talked, but I think I still was gathering my courage, and I was still gathering understanding. It must have been 2014, because I gave this example in class when we were doing that subject of white privilege, and I understood, because what I felt was when we have come from cultures where, because let me tell you, hey, in Africa, and I'm not going to talk about Africa as a continent, but I'm going to say most often the North countries which were colonized, we probably don't still go through colonization, but there's still the aspect of inferiority complex, where people feel like, we don't have as much power as, or these people have got more of a superiority complex than us, so I might as well serve her and leave these ones who also probably have the same inferiority complex, who might understand. And it is quite detrimental. And to make story short, I never go back to that salon again. But that said, I think it's when you come from a point of when you have internal courage, you're going to use that. You would activate that internal courage to sort of be able to walk proudly, walk confidently, and be able to challenge these kinds of norms, because they're definitely not empowering kind of norms. So I guess that's it for me today, and I just hope that we can put the family, we can all say a prayer for that family and all the people who are hurting around the world, because I know it's a lot. But if we can all come together in solidarity and address this issue, I think the whole world has seen and what we are dealing with in 2020. But I think the right things are going to happen. I think the people at the places, the policymakers, the people at the points of decision making are going to make the right call for this, and justice will be made. Okay, so I hope you stay safe, and see you on the next one.